Welcome back, everybody. This is Instructor Phil Demetriadis. We're going to do our little demo here on Peter de Seve. We're going to show you three categories of Peter. This is for the Art 247 traditional media for sketching for animators and illustrators course. Okay. Peter de Seve is an American illustrator who lives on the East Coast, so he's not as popular to some of us out here unless you happen to have an interest in animation. If you look through some of a lot of animated movies that have been recently done, Peter is hired responsibly to pretty much design and work for that particular background. Peter is a genius at drawing and technique, at telling stories with characters, and I'm going to show you his work in three different formats today. We're going to be looking at, like I said, illustration, character design, storytelling, and technique. Okay, he has found a niche for himself. And he's done very good and developed a very profitable and encouraging career working in New York, okay, as an illustrator. So part of this project that we're working on now, where we have to take a particular animal with a personality and a particular job description, is based off of my experience of looking at his work. Okay, it's that wonderful. So let me show you his illustration work first and give you an idea of the type of work that he does. Okay. His work has a very soft edge feel to it, okay? He tends to use watercolors. There's some Prismacolor pencils in there as well. Lots of traditional techniques. And the other thing that he's really great at, obviously he does a lot of illustration covers for New Yorker magazine, okay? What I like about his illustration work is he has a nice way of telling a story. For example, here, we look at this gentleman going through a metal detector. All his clothes are off because that's how paranoid things were back in 2008 when we were going through, like metal screening and terrorist attacks and all this other stuff. They're here to a point where like you couldn't even take anything on a plane, not even a pair of fingernail clippers, right? So anyway, as we go through some of his work and we take a look, he has a natural ability to tell a really fun narrative. Okay, for example, here's an old lady, okay, whose pet is a giant crocodile that's there to protect her, right? So you can look at that as like she's this old lady in New York and has this massive beast of a pet because New York is, ridden with crime, or, you can maybe perhaps get a different connotation into it. It's up to you. But what I like about his work is whenever I look at it, it just has a nice softness to it. You see what I mean? It's like there's not a lot of hard edges. Things are rounded, the colors are soft, the character design is sort of stretched a little bit. There's exaggeration with the people, and he has a way of getting you to notice one particular thing. Like for example, in this piece we have, this giant bear walking in the middle of all these people. So it's, like assimilating into part of that culture, but nobody notices it really around them, right? In the middle of New York, people are so busy walking back and forth, they wouldn't even be able to, distinguish the difference. And it's just, he has a way of keeping a soft part of his draftsmanship, the sketchy quality in his characters translate very well. He doesn't get super tight, but then when he goes to color, he has a way of using just really soft, subtle character washes in his work that bring out a particular look and feel that just make it really inviting. The other thing I really like about his work outside, so I mentioned the color and the use of the watercolor, which is great. Also, by the way, Winnie the Pooh, another famous, property that does the same thing. All their backgrounds are done with watercolor to give that nice, soft, friendly feel, okay, of like a forest. So the other thing that he's doing that's really nice is the sketchiness. He has this great ability to sketch his characters very loosely and not having lots of cornered edges on things. They're very soft. Sometimes he almost loses part of his line and the line fades into other areas. And I'll show you some of his individual drawings because this lecture is based on illustration, based on his sketching and drawing that he does in a sketchbook, and then his close-up of dedicated characters. So this is all illustration here. The other thing that he's great at is storytelling. He has a great way of posing characters. Can you just word out this? I mean, look at this image right here. It makes me want to word it out. The guy's there and he's like, I'm sorry, but I'm too busy to see you anymore. My life schedule with my mother and my father's plantation company is to overwhelm my life. I just can't bear it anymore, right? That's what he's saying. And then look at her. She's like, but you're not gonna leave. You know what I mean? She's like so like fragile. Look at that face. Look at her hands. Look at the gesture. Look at the way her head's sort of popping up in that skinny neck. Everything about her is fragile. He's great at taking a brief or an assignment and bringing it back down to make it work. He thinks about gesture. He thinks about the descriptor. Okay, what I mean by the descriptors, the emotional descriptors to give a particular feel, okay, to part of the illustration. He's really great at bringing that to a high level. I love this one. It's a nude beach, and here's like one character in the middle of the nude beach who's just got tattoos all over, right? And is huge, large, and enormous versus everyone's like in shape and good looking and, you know, and then right in the middle there's this guy with all these tats, right? It's beautiful. There's something about him. There's just this calmliness, this friendliness in all his work that just makes you look at it and you just get sort of excited, you know, and it just makes you feel like, wow, it's like a breath of fresh air every time I look at his stuff, you know. So a lot of this, you know, it deals with the drawing. And some of you in here are new to composition and staging. We have a composition class here with Marshall and a couple others that relate to storytelling. I'm actually writing separate classes this summer that tie directly into digital narrative and digital narrative illustration, I should say, and digital storytelling, right? But it's important to think about how you stage your character and how you tell the story, okay? It's important to think about, and this is from an illustration point of view. This isn't really part of this project. I'll show you samples in a couple minutes, but look at how your eye goes and focuses right there in the middle with, you know, the guy with the orange shirt and the girl with the black shirt and the guy with the, you know, like the jean denim jacket on, right? All right, there's a reason why you tend to focus right there, and part of that is based on the color theory, is that he has the biggest area of contrast right there, okay? He has an orange shirt next to a blue shirt, which has a red glass of wine overlapping it with a bowl of like bread with another yellow like candle going. He has like every possible little color in a little teeny circle just right, sorry, I have to look up here to use my cursor, right up over here. You see that? Everything's wrapped up. And then later on you come back here, faded off in tone, and you see, you know, these like lobsters. It's like a seafood party. Something that, we don't do this here in California because our seafood sucks. Okay, they do this back east. They do. Yeah, they have little party bake things all the time. My wife's grandmother was from Boston, and oh my God, all they did in Boston was like get together and eat lobster and this and that and fish, and everyone would get together and drink like skunks and cook. And that's how the life is over there. And this is a great little illustration. And then you look over here, you see the steamer going. These guys are escaping. See that? They have the little cloth out, and he's starting to sneak by. So it pulls you into the illustration, and then you see the rest of the characters, and it sort of comes alive, and it makes you think like, man, not only is it drawn nicely, there's story in there, the narrative's great, the storytelling's great, the technique of illustrating it's great. It's just wonderful, you know. This is why I want to use watercolor. Is that, oops, I didn't mean to jump ahead there. This is the type of the soft effect that you get when you use watercolor. That's cool. I remember when I first saw this, I'm like, what is it? And it's like, it's a witch stopping, and she needs a little black cat to ride on her broom. And she's in front of a little pet store. And there's a cute little kitty, all black, sitting there looking at her, right? See, he has a way of connecting you to what's happening in the scene. And there's only a couple artists that I know of that do that very well, that are in an animation illustration point of view. Pascal Campion is the other one, and then there's this gentleman right here, okay? There's something that they do to bring you into part of the story and make you appreciate and give you a thought and feel for what is happening, for what you're looking at. And that right there is irreplaceable. This other stuff, the drawing, I could teach you the drawing. You can learn the mileage over time. You can learn more about character design, right? But outside of that, and then comes the storytelling, which is the ability to compose and tell a very nice story and to keep your focal point. That's probably the hardest thing at this level, is keeping your your fellow artists that are admiring your work, and also your viewers focused into a particular focal point and not letting them leave. And so even on a composition level, we could come back here and you could look at what's happening. Look at this curve. This curve that comes down. This broom sort of comes down. The broom's like here, angled, where you're almost like you want this guy to jump out and land on it so she could take off, right? And it's the way she's looking. Look at what her nose is pointing at. Her hat curves back, which brings you back to this, brings you right back into here. You go right back up here. Do you see it? There's a large circle there. Okay? Look, there's another circle in here. Look at the dirt on the window. Creates another circle shape that breaks you into here. So when you look at part of this composition, it's a series of circles overlapping each other that bring you back into part of the character. Okay? I know we're not doing this on our current assignment, but I'm just showing it to you because I want you to see what a real master looks like. And what really talented artists, he doesn't go out there and draw the first version and put it on paper. No. This is a guy who's in his sketchbook on a regular basis. And he's drawing. I'll show you some sketches in a minute, okay? But everything about this is, look, it's a cafe. So here's the cook putting salt out on the snow. Those of you, because we're in California, they don't realize it, but salt melts snow, okay? If you live in Chicago and anywhere on the East Coast, your cars fall apart because of all the salt you put on the road, right? So I should say Midwest or East Coast, right? Look at how he's putting the salt on the snow, though. He's not like dishing it out with a salt shaker. He's doing it like this. He's sprinkling it out like he's cooking, okay, with a little bit of class, a little bit of integrity right there, right? It's beautiful. It's very nicely done, okay? I love this. Look at the photographer focused on the butterfly. He's just up close with his camera, like trying to get the right angle, and all around him is like the whole rest of the forest ready to kill him. And he has no idea. It's beautiful. This is the part, this is why I can't wait. This is why I really want to write the digital narrative illustration classes is the Photoshop classes we already have, they teach technique. And they teach you how to apply technique to environment. Going into narrative illustration, it's totally different because now you're having to think about the story, trying to think about how do you make a connection to your viewer? How do you create with what I call, we were actually talking about this earlier today, ethos and pathos from the Greeks, right? Okay? How do you create an ethos? How do you create empathy inside your viewer that makes them share a little bit more feeling and appreciate your work a little bit more? This is a great way to do it, Good story, simplicity. I love that. The New Yorker, right? Have you ever heard that expression about what a jungle it is out there in New York? Look at that. There's the lion eating while all the other animals are running outside. Okay? So, do you catch that? There's a woman waking up in the morning, and do you see what's next to her? Can you make it out? You see like the, huh? Well, the thing is, you can't sort of tell. You see the tentacles coming out there? So it's a woman who just had like a one-night stand who was intoxicated. And she slept or made love with something that has tentacles and one eye with two ears under the covers. And she's come to the realization, like, as she wakes up early in the morning, like, where am I? What am I doing? You see the look on the face? You know how hard it is to grab that look on that character's face? And I mean, look at the tentacles coming out of the, and there's like this head with the one eye and the ears. It's like, she's sitting there going, what did I do? Where am I? What is this thing next to me? As she's reaching over, touching, realizing that she has made a huge mistake. Okay? It's just thought. There's just a certain amount of compassion in his work that makes you respect it, I don't know what this was for, but I just look over and I see the little gnome right there, and I was like, okay. There's a little gnome in the middle of the thing. That's cool. It's fine. Okay, but just everything, when you look at his illustrations, I mean, if you like, I could put all these images up on the blog for you from this lecture. I have them all separate, and you could flip through them if you like, if any of them inspire you, or I'll upload this video back on YouTube. You can rewatch it on the class blog as well. Okay, just, you know, looking apart his background, looking at that character with the beard, you know, little cup of coffee, leaning back in his chair, happy in his little world here of souvenirs and other items, and, you know, pretty cool. It's gorgeous stuff. Okay. So if you notice some similarities in these pieces, you'll notice, this is pretty cool, right? You think of a better Easter display, right? They're like, look, honey, and there's the egg. You know, it's a great idea. It's clever. It's gorgeous. Okay, so that's a bunch of his work. Now let's take a look at his sketchbook. Okay, this is where you start to see a lot of the life come out in his work. This is why, when the illustrations we were just looking at, this is why the illustrations still retain the life to them. One of the most common problems with student work is you get to a final and you clean it up and you suck all the life out of it and you kill it. Not just a student problem, also happens to people at higher levels working in animation and entertainment and working as illustrators. You tighten your stuff up too much to where you suck out the life. And he realized that. So what did he do? He did something a little bit different. The tip of this, and I know this because being around guys like John Navarez, sketching myself, getting to have classes with different artists and different people in LA, you break off the tip of your pencil. You refrain from rendering. You refrain from adding detail. By drawing with a broad tip pencil or a wedge pencil, you focus on the line and you tell part of the story. You go out and you draw and you sketch, okay? And you get a chance to focus on developing the character itself. So what I want to ask of you guys to do is today, today I was going to ask you to finish your design process, okay? Bring it back here ready to go on Monday. Last class, I went around individually and looked at your work and gave comments. Once you get to your final character that you've designed, I want you to then go in and try to redraw that character with a blunt pencil, blunt Prismacolor pencil in black, because Prismacolor is wax-based. So if it's waxy and it's on paper, you can watercolor on top of it. So that means you would have to get watercolor paper first. Okay, or sit and sketch the heck out of your character with a blunt pencil until you create a looseness that you see in his work here. See this loose expression, this feeling of how he designs, okay? Which, do you guys recognize the image on the left there? That's from Ratatouille. So a lot of his work has been designing characters for animated features over multiple years, from Disney to Pixar to Blue Sky. Okay, not a bad gig. While he's doing his illustration work, while he's doing children's book work. We always talk about in all my classes, I tell everybody, if you want to be successful as an artist, you can't do one thing, you got to do 3 or 4 different things. He's an illustrator, he makes children's books, illustrates children's books for other people, and works inside entertainment doing character stuff. Okay? You have to diversify your skill sets a little bit. Okay? So, you see that looseness in the feel here? Do you see how lines aren't just necessarily dark, but they break apart, they fade apart, they're very loose and rough. The interior lines are loose and rough. There's not a lot of this happening. There's not a lot of rendering happening. There's the bluntness of the pencil going in and adding interior contour line detail to make something pop and to make it work. This is what makes him such a talented guy, is he has an ability to remain rough and loose. Call that roost if you want, right? He can remain super rough and super loose, and that's really, really, really important. So I hope after today's little lecture, the one thing you walk away with is you have a better understanding of, wow, you know, Phil introduced us to color erase pencils. I really got to loosen up quite a bit. What happens if I shift to a Prismacolor pencil? What if I'm drawing in black, indigo blue, brown, a couple other colors? One pencil from Prismacolor is like what are they, a buck? One pencil, one color, and you get like multiple pages. Sounds worth it to me if you could discover a looseness and feel to your work. And the great thing about drawing with this is then you can go over part of this in watercolor. Now, that can be a little bit more complicated because you might have to take part of your character that's drawn, and then when you might have to just rough really lightly and pencil like a 6H. And then after you put down your now this is more technique. Then when you put down your watercolor, we'll get to this in a minute when I show you some other versions, then you come back on top of it with a Prismacolor. So you have to figure out a way to get to the image that you want that's rough and loose. Draw it lighter, put water, because if you put watercolor on pencil, it'll smear it. If you put light 6H, which has less graphite, the watercolor won't really smear the graphite because it's more glue. But then if you come back on top of that with a black Prismacolor pencil and pull out some of your lines, and then you continue to watercolor, it won't darken as much as compared if you were using like a HB or 2B pencil, where the graphite will mix with the watercolor and you'll get a mud. Okay, so there's a way to build that up, but that's what the lecture is going to be for on Monday, where I'm going to bring in my a couple characters roughed. I'm going to pull out some watercolor washes. I'm going to start to watercolor them. And I'm going to draw on top of them as they dry, and I'm going to try to show you an approach to part of this technique. But back to this. This is good old Sketchbook, folks. Go out with a Prismacolor pencil and sit and sketch and draw at a coffee house. Just one pencil. I go out with a couple students sometimes, and they have like 3 bags of pencils. They have a bag of markers, a bag of this, a bag of micron pigments, another bag of this. No, simplify it. Just go with like 5 pencils. Let me see if I brought my bag. No, I didn't. I have and I say that because I have 5 bags myself. I have a bag of Tombow markers, a bag of micron pigments, a bag of Optiflow pens from Staples that are a pen I discovered that work really fantastically with sketching and drawing. I use in my sketchbook all the time. Okay. I can't wait. I have 2 pages left in my sketchbook and I'm done. And I get to start a new sketchbook. And I think I'm going to dedicate this whole sketchbook to Prismacolor of just sketching and drawing in it. Look at how beautiful these sketches are. Here's one of my favorite ones. We're coming up right here. Look at that. Princess Leia. Woohoo. With Java, right? And I like this guy in the corner who's like, ah, right there, right? Look at how loose it is. Look at how fun it is. If you're getting stuck on your characters, I don't mind putting this work up for you to see. I want you to look at this. This is a pinnacle illustrator that's up at that high level. You should be looking at his work, trying to ascertain and get to his level. You should be able to look at your finished designs that you finished today and then look at his work over the weekend and go, how do I make my work look more like his work? That's good, because what it will eventually do won't make you a copycat or a copier of Peter de Seve. His style will influence you, and then your style, being influenced by other artists as well, will eventually go on its own and develop into your own style. You will develop your own self as Chandler, your own self as Tito or Simeon. Your own work will come out of there over time. But just like the old masters were taught, you have to have somebody to copy and to look at to get to that level. You have to ramp yourself up. You cannot sit in a room without looking at other people's works and other artists and be influenced and say, well, I'm going to be a great artist. It doesn't happen. You have to have their work available to look at, okay? And Peter's just a total genius. So there's a lot to say about the way that he draws and the gestures and the personality that he catches. He spends a lot of time. Do you think he's going to be good at sketching if he doesn't, do you think he's going to be good at illustrating if he doesn't go outside and sketch people in random positions? Oh my God, no. You have to go outside and sketch people. One of my favorite things to do is to people watch. When was the last time you just people watched? I love people watching. I love going to the mall and just sitting there and watching people like argue and yell and run back and forth and lost and confused. It's great. You pick up so much about gestures and human interaction. Okay? Going to the zoo and sketching. Look at this lady with the drink in her hand. Doesn't that just make you want to do the voice? You know what I see right there? What do you see? I'll tell you what I see after you tell me what you see. What do you see there? Right there in that sketch, that woman on the left there. Come on, don't be shy. What do you see? I see a high affluent, like woman who almost looks like she's at a horse race, holding her kid who's about ready to like explode in his diaper, as she's knocking back drinks, talking with people, getting hammered. That's what I see in that illustration. That voice, like, that sort of just that Richie voice. Oh, yes, I totally know. Just talking with other people. And, oh, yes, we just added a new chandelier to our home and we're extending the back. And Jim just went on vacation and bought a new boat for us. And the kid's like screaming and yelling. And she's just like holding him way to the side. And his face is like, it's great. It's beautiful. We didn't really talk about the camel there, but that's a whole another discussion. I don't know what that guy is. He's part camel, but he's sort of missing the hump, but that's okay. Okay? Oops. What am I doing? I jumped too far. My bad. Okay? Look at that guy. I love the guy with the umbrella. Looks frustrated. All right? It's beautiful designs. There's just something about the softness in his sketches that continue forward and just bring a lot of character. There's something to say about drawing soft. You know what I mean? There's still line there to show form, and there's interior contour line, but it's just the way that the sketch sort of comes together with a nice gesture, a rough feel. There's not over-rendering going on, and it just gives you a nice little story aspect to what's happening. Okay? All right. Next, character illustration. This is why I sort of created the assignment the way that I did. Right there. Okay? A inquisitive Dr. Elephant. Right? How do you illustrate that? How do you pull it together? These should be the examples that you're looking at here. Look at the way he's drawing the face, the eyes, the posing. Look at the softness. Look at the props. Look at the outfit. Man, and remember, I gave you the chance of your character can be from the feet up or it can be from the waist up. And I'll show you a couple waist up sketches here in a second. This is, to me, where he shines, is getting into these individual characters and showing a lot of personality that come right out into the front. Okay? That was for Mulan, by the way. That was one of the early sketches for one of the leaders of the Mulan tribe. That's in the Art of Mulan book. Okay, it's beautiful. Look at the soft fade off down here of the watercolor, Look at the eyes and the way I've noticed he tends to leave his eyes white sometimes, create a little bit more contrast, or he puts a little dot in there. Okay? But it's beautiful stuff, isn't it? I see it, I just look at this, I go, I just want to go draw all week. And just leave my kids, my wife, disappear and go sit in a cabin in the mountains and just draw characters. But it needs to be somewhere that's populated so I can have people to look at. Right? Look at how fun that is. Looks like an investment banker. I've noticed in some of his work, a lot of times he's using Prisma just directly. Even in a sketchbook, I actually have an image coming up here at the very end that shows his sketchbook. It shows an image from his sketchbook, and you look at it and you just go, ugh, because it's so awesome, It's so good. But that's what this is meant to be. Notice, again, what I talked about in our last class a little bit, the squash and the stretch, a shape, and how he's, pushing the size of the eyes. Look at the eagerness. Look at the ears, the hands, the knuckles, the curve in the face, everything. All those things come together. If you look at your drawing and your drawing feels stiff, your final design, what do you have to do? Just loosen up and go draw it from a couple angles. You can still keep all the design premise in that drawing, but go draw it 7 more times until you start to loosen up. What is tightness in a drawing? It's death. When a drawing is super tight, it doesn't communicate pose, it doesn't communicate gesture, it does not communicate personality. Okay? This is a great I like that one. She's like concentrating so hard. Look at her fingers, are like ready to snap, and there's one freaking fly that's bugging the crap out of her. It's flying around as she's sitting there, right? It's great. It's wonderful. Look at her legs are crossed. She's all toned and pretty, and she's got her fingers touching, and she's in the middle of her Zen state, and all of a sudden there's bzzz, just nonstop flying around. It's annoying, right? Excellent. Okay. Notice the color, guys. That's something to think about too when you're working on your character. How can you introduce some more color to your character? How do you make them pop a little bit? Vibrant color makes things read, makes things fun, makes them happy and enjoyable. Okay? So you have to think about that a little bit. How do I incorporate that into part of your design? You can have a bunch of flat colors too that are more soft earth tone. You know what? Maybe I should retract that. I don't want you to feel like I'm just suggesting that. If you throw some color in there, it makes your work pop. If some of you aren't comfortable with color yet and you just want to stick with like earth tone colors or like soft pastel analogous colors, you don't want to have lots of complements in there, that's fine. You don't have to. Build your skill set up and build your confidence. That's the only reason why I retracted that statement, you know. But when you come back and you start looking at some of his work here, what's some of the common thread you're going to notice about the work is you're going to notice how he uses color, though. He does use it very nicely. Warms against cools all the time to get things to pop, to get you to focus. Okay? That, for some of you that might not recognize it, that is something called a phone booth. Back in the day, we had to walk into these booths and they had phones in them and you had to pay $0.25 to make a call. It was 20 cents. And you could make a call if it was local, and then if it was long distance, you would immediately get a message that would say, please deposit another $1.50 to retain the call. And you'd have to put $1.50 in real quick or else it would drop you. Okay? Back in the day, I know some of you guys haven't grown up around that, and some people were loud, so they actually had doors on them that you could close on them. Okay? That's sort of weird to me that my generation had that and your generation hasn't even seen those. There's no more payphones out everywhere, right?
There's one at the post office.
Is there one?
And La Habra, I was like, oh,
there's a real phone.
It's got the phone on.
Yeah. It's just sort of a
police station, so I think like if they arrest you or whatever, they're like, they give you $0.25.
Yeah,
right?
that's your phone call there, right? Yeah, they're like, here's $0.25, go make a call. Not on our bill, right? You know. But no, that's just where technology, that's where times have just changed a little bit. But, you know, it's cool, right? Look at that watercolor technique. It's a beautiful technique. So, you now know the sketchbook I showed you guys? Mine here, the Strathmore 400 covered whatever. They make this in watercolor as well. They make it in a thick paper so you could do stuff like that. That would be fun, filling up a whole sketchbook of characters in watercolor. Aha! Right? That would be fantastic. Okay? Look at that guy. That's sketchbook. See the white marker around him? See the little Prisma highlights? And different parts of the character. Base colors, soft colors, build up. In watercolor, we work light to dark. Put down a light wash. You come back, put a little bit more of another wash, and then you can put some darks in there. Just stay sort of simple. You come back and you go on top of that with Prismacolor and you get a beautiful effect. It's a great technique. It's probably, sorry, that one's in there double. It's probably, but it deserves to be, probably one of my favorite techniques of all time, traditionally, because it applies to so many different methods. It works great in sketching, works great on watercolor paper, different sketchbooks, works great as an illustration technique. You can't go wrong with it. Okay? I think I have this in here twice as well. Yes, I duplicated it by accident. When I was putting my lecture together, I'll take that out. Did you catch that? You would have to have a cat to understand that. Okay? My brother and I found a cat once, and it disappeared after a month and a half. I think it got eaten by a coyote because there were lots of coyotes by our house. But we were feeding it, and on the second week, I woke up to a big dead bird sitting right in next to my bed. It was from the cat. It's the cat's way of saying, thank you for feeding me, master. Here's a bird for you. Internal hunting instincts. And see the cat coming back with the Christmas tree? Big old dead mouse right there for you. Right? It's great. Okay. If you want to do something like that that's more monochromatic, you still can. You can pull it off. You just have to make sure you keep the gesture there and you keep the line weight open and it's not super duper tight, right? Okay. Looseness, roughness is great. That makes characters translate. Totally does. One thing, I wish I had more of his work, but my old director, his name was Phil Mendez, is a guy I worked with back in the day. A wonderful human being. And Phil was rough like a pen. Rough like a pen. Rough with a pen like I'd never seen before. He had these particular fountain Pentel pens that he would use. They're all white with like a little black tip on them. They're like calligraphy pens. And he would just sit on animation paper and just be super duper rough. Actually was excited. He actually came onto my blog, my YouTube site, and left me feedback one day. Phil, it's great to see you. His name was Phil too. So it's like, Phil, great to see you with passion and still doing this stuff and talking about it. He's such an inspiration. And then what a small world. Turns out he's still out sketching and drawing around LA quite a bit. And he's good friends with what he knows Mike Sheehan, who's an instructor here, who's also out sketching in LA. And there's this other lady named Lori who's also out sketching with both of them all the time. She did a little documentary on them. I showed it to you guys. Okay, really fantastic. Phil and both Peter have that same looseness that come out in their artwork that make them really viable and interesting as artists. Okay, I think that's actually a render there to give, but that's a character that he had designed. Okay, for Ice Age. Love that guy right there. Beautiful, a little bird. Okay. So if you can get your character, and I said you could use props. That bathtub's a prop. You can find a way to tell me a little bit more about your character with some props and a sketch. And as we go to this watercolor phase and start to render, that's great. You can make it work. Okay. Here's our last and final image here that I wanted to leave you with from the sketchbook. I think this is it. There might be one more after this. No, this is it. This is the final one. Look at that. Look at the colors in there. It's beautiful. Note the brown paper. Note the white behind the colors to get it to pop. Look at the black, some of the light black lines, the watercolor that's on there. It's gorgeous. Okay? I don't mind posting this up. If you guys want me to, I can. If you want to go to Pinterest and look it up yourself. Do you want me to post all these images up on the blog?
Yes.
For you? Yes? Okay. I have them all there. I'll just upload them. It takes me 5 seconds to do that. So I'll do that, and I'm going to go ahead and finish part of this lecture. But basically what I wanted to do is, the whole purpose of this was just to introduce you guys to Peter de Seve. I want you to see his work. I want you to look at it from an illustration point of view, a storytelling point of view, especially a technical point of view as we are finishing your designs. But most importantly, I want you to leave, as I leave today with this lecture and you work the rest of the time in class, I want you to think about, we'll do the name on the board. Again, I'll come around and take a look at your work. I want you to consider that once your character is done, if it's super tight, how do I need to go in and loosen it up? I need to, something I also didn't point out here, you'll notice in a lot of his work, the gesture and the movement of the character. He doesn't have a lot of characters with their arms right down by their sides, so they're all linked up like the letter A. The hands are out, they're moving, the characters are in gestures, in big S shapes, in C's, in D's, in curves, right? When people are moving and in movement with large gesture lines, it communicates a lot more to the viewer. Okay, it does. It doesn't make the animals look as stiff. All right? Cool. Happy drawing. Thank you, guys.